Hey, it's 1 o'clock. Time to start again, guys. I'm going to wait a minute or two because there's quite a few people that are still out to lunch. But it is 1 o'clock and it's time to start chapter 2. Unit 1, question 11 is confusing, isn't it? Also by all licenses. Question 11. No, because salespersons licensed with real estate referral companies don't have to do CE courses, Regina. All right, so let me moderate the conversation. It's time to get started again, guys. Chapter 2, Commission Rules and Regulations. All right. Now, at the end of Chapter 2, you should be able to identify the standards set by the licensing law and commission rules regarding the brokerage business. Also, you should be able to explain commission regulations for broker business relationships and advertising, and be able to describe violations and penalties of the license law. So there are 3 cardinal sins that a salesperson must never, ever do. Number 1, a salesperson may not accept any form of compensation except from his or her supervising broker. Did you hear that? Salesperson cannot accept any form of compensation, cash, checks, gifts, except from his or her supervising broker. Earlier today, someone asked a question about accepting gifts from clients and things like that. Well, here's your answer. No. It says a salesperson may not accept any form of compensation except from his or her supervising broker. Therefore, if your client wants to give you a bonus, a gift, a tip, for doing a good job, it must be payable to the broker. And then the broker has a commission split agreement with you that he will split whatever gift, bonus, or thing came in with you. What? Yeah. You can only be paid by your supervising broker, no one else. Now, in case no one heard that, let me repeat that one more time. A salesperson may not accept any form of compensation except from his or her supervising broker. So, any questions about that? Apparently there are. Can I gift to someone for revering a client or a home for? Oh, you mean for referring a client or a home to you? Well, it's up to your broker to discuss with you about what his policies are. It's not for me to tell you that. What if after the deal's done? Maybe you didn't understand what I said, Avon. I'm sorry, who said that? Well, yeah, Avon, Rod Damo. Maybe you didn't hear what I said. What I said was the salesperson may not accept any form of compensation except from his or her supervising broker. That doesn't give a time frame. It just says you can't accept any form of compensation. Doesn't say anything about giving gifts. You can give gifts all day long if you want. I don't care about your gifts. Your broker might, but I don't. Thanks for all your help, Tim. I passed my due state exam. Oh, Ismail, good for you. Congratulations. Go out and be a good realtor now. Good job. How about if you were driving them around to look at houses, can they give you gas money? What? I'm sorry, maybe I didn't make myself clear. Let me repeat what I'm supposed to have said. A salesperson may not accept any form of compensation except from his or her supervising broker. I'm sorry, what about that is so hard to understand? Am I speaking in tongues? Have I suddenly become in the spirit and become Unworldly, that nobody understands what I'm saying? Guys, any form of compensation. All right. I got to move on. I think we have a language barrier or something because some people obviously don't understand the fact that a salesperson may not accept any form of compensation except from his or her supervising broker. I'm going to move on. Number two, a salesperson may not maintain an escrow account or hold funds belonging to others. Only a licensed real estate broker is authorized to have an escrow account or to hold money belonging to others. Salespeople do not have that authority. And number three, a salesperson may not work for more than one New Jersey broker at a time. Now, if you work in multiple states, yes, you could work for multiple brokers, at least so long as you work for only one broker at a time in New Jersey. You can't be working for more than one broker at a time. Now, hopefully my English was good enough that you guys understood that, but are there any questions about these three rules? Apparently a couple questions. Okay, so everybody felt necessary to delay our class just to say no. Okay. Then let me moderate the conversation and move on. Now, a real estate broker must maintain a physical office in New Jersey. It is a requirement of the New Jersey Real Estate Commission that a broker operates a brick and mortar physical office in New Jersey. It's required. Now, I've had students tell me, but there are companies that don't have offices in New Jersey. And I'm going to tell you right now, they can't operate as a New Jersey realtor unless they have a physical office in New Jersey. So every broker who operates in New Jersey, whether you're a resident or not of the state, must have a physical office in New Jersey. Must. Now, the broker, if zoning laws permit, could have an office in his own home if he wanted to, but a salesperson cannot. A broker could have an office in his home, but a salesperson cannot. That's the law. So there must be at least a main office where the broker does business. An office somewhere. Why? Well, guys, for the past 100 years, business has been such that we meet clients at offices, we store records at our offices, we have mail sent and received at certain offices. And there must be a physical entity known as a real estate brokerage firm that operates in a physical office space. It's a requirement by the commission. The biggest reason for that law is that there must be a place where the real estate commission can show up unannounced if they want to and demand an open book inspection of all the broker's records, and the broker cannot disagree. He must allow them. Yes, I had an office in Clifton a couple of years. And one day on a Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock, guy walks in the front door, flashes a New Jersey Real Estate Commission identification, says, "I'm here to look at your books." There's my records room. Go at it. Well, he grabbed my ledger for the escrow account and went into the records room and closed the door. 4.5 hours later, he emerged from the room, handed me my ledger book back and a fine of $25. Now, if you know me, if you know anything about me, I am meticulous about records. I think paperwork is the bane of my existence. All the more reason why I have a requirement to have to master it. My paperwork is meticulous, and I got a fine for $25 because a federal lead-based paint disclosure form was signed in an inappropriate space by one of the buyers in the transaction. The fact that they signed the document is fine, but according to the inspector, it wasn't in the appropriate location. $25 fine to me. I said, is that all you found out in my records? He goes, you keep meticulous records. He goes, I knew it as soon as I hit your escrow ledger. And that's where they always start. They hit the escrow ledger first because they want to see, how do I handle client funds? My escrow account is to the penny perfect. Entry on this date indicates a check of number so-and-so was received from client so-and-so for a deposit on a contract to purchase property at so-and-so. The date of deposit is recorded with the amount recorded, check number, who it's from and what it's for. And then I'll put in there projected closing date, so I know that in a certain amount of time, I'm going to have to withdraw those funds to convey to the attorneys for the closing documentation. So my records are meticulous. And he said, as soon as I saw that, I knew the rest of your records was, but you know, it's like, oh, you have to find something wrong. $25 fee. So I said, man, I must be the worst offender in the world. He goes, no, no, no. Just yesterday, I came from one of those big box stores. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. $7,500 in fines for paperwork missing. Yeah. Guys, I'm going to tell you right now, your paperwork is your evidence in real estate. It is your lifeblood. If you hate paperwork like I do, then you better get the attitude in your head right now that you better be the master of your paperwork. Because if you're not, it will kill you. Missing paperwork can cost you listings. It can cost you commission checks. Yeah, this is serious stuff. So know that your broker has to maintain records at the place of business so the real estate commission representative can go there at any time, unannounced, and demand an open book inspection, and the broker must grant them that right. That's why primarily today, a broker must have a physical office. And I know we have online record storage with cloud storage and everything, but that's regardless of the fact that we must keep physical records for 6 years. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So there's a main office. If the broker is fortunate enough to be successful and has additional offices called branch offices, then so be it. Welcome to the club. There's a lot of successful real estate brokers out there with multiple offices. They have a main office and branch offices. Now, the broker in the main office and the branch office, that brokerage job must be his only source of employment. You cannot be a real estate broker in charge of an office and have another job. No way. Real estate commission won't allow it. It must be your only source of income. You don't like that? Then I'm sorry, maybe you don't want to be a broker and have your own business. But the broker must be in the office minimally 5 out of 7 calendar days per week, Monday through Friday, between the hours of 8 and 5 p.m. during normal work hours. What? Yeah. So how's a broker supposed to make any money? Well, that's why he hires salespeople to go out and generate business. But what if I'm a producer and I have my own company? Do I want to be the broker and not be able to go out and produce the way I know I can and miss business opportunities? That's one of the reasons I no longer want to be a broker. Because if I have an opportunity I want to capitalize on, I may be restricted by my office environment and have to be there instead of that client's face. No way. It's not me anymore. I'm not that guy. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be the guy who goes out and makes a deal and gets the big check. That's the guy I want to be. So whether you're in the main office or the branch office, The person in charge of that office must be no less than, for the branch office, a broker-salesperson, someone who's earned their broker's license but employed under the chief supervising broker of the company. And in the main office, that's usually the employing broker. That's where he holds his hat. Are there any questions about these rules and regulations so far that I presented from the Real Estate Commission about offices? Okay, Rachel, to be redundant, he must be in the office a minimum of 5 days during the business week and must be there during normal business hours. And it's right from your book. Was there anybody else with a question? Yes, correct. The salesperson cannot have an office at home. Does that mean you cannot own another business ran by others? No, I didn't say that. No. No, this must be your only job. You can own other companies and generate other streams of income, but this must be your full-time business. How much can a broker make? As much as he's capable of making. I mean, I don't know where that question came from, but the sky's the limit. So there cannot be the same broker for main office and branch office? Correct. Anybody else? So it's not really beneficial to go into business as a broker and be the only salesperson in the office. Well, all you have to do is supervise yourself. Sometimes that's not as easy as it sounds. What's an escrow ledger? We're going to talk about it, Jason, so hang on to your question. We'll get there. Anybody else with a question before I move on? Not seeing any, let's move on. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. What if a broker is not a New Jersey resident? Well, then he still has to have an office in New Jersey someplace. So he has to rent the spot and create an office. Can't be in his home since it's not in state. All right. Hang on, guys, just a second. Little conversations going out in the hallway. It's a busy place here at the center. Good Lord. Anyway, so, all right. I think I answered the questions. Let's move on. Trust accounts. Question about the escrow ledger. Now, a real estate broker is required by the Real Estate Commission to operate an escrow account. It's also known as the trust account where client funds are stored. It must be in a New Jersey authorized depository. So if you're a real estate broker wanting to open up an office and an escrow account, you can ask the Real Estate Commission to supply you with a list of all New Jersey approved depositories in which you can open a trust account. So then you open the trust account. The trust account is where you store client funds and keep them until needed. Now, the broker is not allowed to keep his operating accounts in the trust account. It's only for client monies. However, there is one exception, and that is the broker can keep in the escrow account enough operating funds from his business account for the operation of that escrow account. So if my escrow account costs me $120 a year, then I can put in $1,200 into the trust account and pay my operating fees for the trust account out of that money. But that's it. I can't put any other funds from the business in there, only if it's for use to be used to pay for the operational expense of that account. If I were to add any other monies to that account, that would be called commingling, and that's illegal. Mixing client funds with the business funds of the real estate company is illegal. Commingling is a federal bank offense and can be punishable by fines and imprisonment. So we must be very meticulous in our money keeping job. So the escrow account is for client funds, no commingling. And when a deposit is accepted by a licensee, the Real Estate Commission requires that it must be placed into the trust account no more than 5 days later. In other words, once you get a check from a client, you have 5 calendar days in which to get that money in the bank, period. If you don't, you could then be charged with, again, commingling or unsafe or unauthorized usage of a client's funds. If you're not storing it, what are you doing with it? Why isn't it in there? When I had my own business, my policy was 24 hours. If you, excuse me. If you received a check from a client, you had 24 hours to get it into your trust account, or you better have some explaining to do in front of me in my office. I want to know where that client fund is. So, first of all, brokers can only use the trust account for deposit of client funds, not commingling except for operational expense money. And if accepting cash, must give the depositor a cash receipt. Now, you guys are going to have to get out into Staples, Home Office Depot, or whatever, and go buy yourself a cash receipt booklet. People will be paying you cash for transactions sometimes. And if that's the case, you have to give them a physical receipt for the cash. Without that, there's no record of the cash, and bad things can happen due to that. So understand, guys, is to protect yourself to give cash receipts to consumers who give you cash. Now, if a client were to give me any advance funds for any specific reason, what do you mean advance funds, Tim? What does that mean? Well, let's take an example. Here it is January. The weather is about, well, maybe another, who knows, 2 weeks or something, about to get really, really cold, because usually end of January, February, pretty cold around here. And we get snow and slush and all kinds of stuff. So I have a client who I had just listed their house, and I'm going to do an open house next Sunday. But the weather forecast for 2 feet of snow on Sunday or Saturday. And they're going away to Florida for a few days. Mr. Client, I would ask you to deposit in my trust account an amount of about $250 just in case it does snow and I need to hire a contractor to come and shovel the driveway and the walkways, put some sand down so if we have the open house, people won't slip and fall and get hurt and sue you. And if you do, that money is safe, kept in that escrow account until needed. And if we don't need it, well, then I'll just return it to you when you get back. But if I do need it, I'm going to make an entry into the journal as to what the money was used for. So within 90 days after depositing this fund, I can give you back when any balance and an explanation of the charges that were incurred, or just return the full amount to you. So it must be done within 90 days after the fees were received from the client. Brokers cannot withdraw any money from the trust account when the checks are made out to cash. No, no, no. It must be made out to a client's name or an attorney's trust account or some person's name other than the broker, and only with proper authorization. So trust accounts are designed to safeguard client funds. Brokers cannot commingle funds. Whenever cash is received, cash receipts must be given. Whenever advance funds are received, they must be returned within 90 days or an explanation of what the balance or the charges were. And withdrawals can never be for a specific person or to cash. It must be for a specific attorney or client. And brokers are required to maintain all permanent records of real estate transactions, escrow accounts, employment records, everything they do for no less than 6 years. Let me repeat that. Brokers are required to keep all paperwork, all records for a minimum of 6 years, period. Now, when we talk about cash, let's talk about a very frank discussion here, guys. People will be giving you cash. If you're going to be doing rentals, cash is king. Hey, Tim, here's $5,000 for the first month and the security deposit. I want you to hold so that we can put it down the apartment when we find it. Great. If you do, I'm going to give you a cash receipt and I'm going to put it in the escrow account. That's fine. Cash is king, guys. A lot of people prefer using cash. That's fine. However, if a client were to give me $10,000 in cash, then I have a question or two. First of all, Mr. Depositor, Mr. Client, this is clean money, I have to ask, right? What do you mean? Well, what's going to happen is when I bring $10,000 in cash to the bank, they're going to want to know what's the name of the depositor and how they can contact you. And I have to give them that information. And then they're going to ask you to fill out a bank form, which is for the IRS, to declare that you earned the money legally and you paid taxes on it. So if you can do that, then I have no problem depositing your $10,000 and you will be getting that form from the bank. But if you have a problem with that, then don't give me cash. Give me a money order, a check, something other than that. But I don't want any records of this. Well, there's a red flag that should be going off in your head. It's a good possibility, because I have to report it, that depositor may not be able to account for it as legally earned income. And if the IRS does their investigation, determines that this money is not legally earned, then they can confiscate those funds right out of my escrow account and open an investigation into that client's doings. So guys, understand, cash is king. I dig that. I really do. And I'm a firm believer in that. However, if you accept $10,000 in cash for a transaction from a client, you have to let them know that the IRS is going to follow up with them to make sure it's legit. If they give you $5,000 today and maybe $6,000 tomorrow, it's less than $10,000, right? No. If it's for the same transaction that equals up to more than $10,000 in cash, it's going to be reported and the IRS will be sending the form out. Just remember, if they're going to give you cash, just let them know that if it's $10,000 or more, they're going to get a letter from the IRS. That's all you got to remind them. And again, this last bullet item, real important. Brokers must maintain permanent records for at least 6 years. Any questions about an escrow account? What it's used for? Well, John probably has a company. I'd be writing a check out to John's company. Yes, brokers operate one trust account for client funds. What if you, David, I'm sorry, but stop asking the what if questions. We could sit here all day with a million permutations about what if, and we'd never get the next topic covered. So the general rule is, okay, they can clean their own snow. Yeah, they can, if they're not home. If they're home, yeah. All right, I don't see any other questions. Does the salesperson share the same responsibilities mentioned on the slide? Specifically, what are you talking about, Hansami? What do you mean responsibilities? And if I miss your question, Adeline, then I miss your question. Just ask it again. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions or clarifications. So is an escrow account like the brokerage being a bank for the client? I'm trying to understand it. No, the broker's not being the bank. The bank is being the bank. We would go to a New Jersey authorized depository as a broker, open up an escrow account in that bank, not in my company, in the bank. I can't have a self-perpetuating trust account for my own clients in my own business. I'm mixing funds. It's commingling. It's illegal. It must be in an authorized New Jersey depository. Is it always 250, or can it be a different amount? What are you talking about? Was what always 250? Did I miss something? Oh, you're referring to the fact that I used 250 as an example. Guys, that was an example. It's not the law. I was just saying, let's say I take 250 from person. That's whatever. I could say 50. I could say 5,000. It doesn't matter. There's no limit. So please, guys, don't be so literal. I mean, I think we can get along without being too literal here. Was there any questions? Sergio, you got a question? So you're typing a question. Apparently not. Okay, so let me move on. Please, guys, keep your dialogue bars closed. Don't open them up unless you have a question. All right. Sales contracts, regulation of sales contracts. Well, here's the thing. Contracts come in many different forms. We have listing agreements. We have agency agreements. We have sales contracts. There's employment agreements. There's leases that are contracts as well as conveyances. There's all kinds of contracts in the real estate business. So the rule is whenever you sign contracts with a client, no matter if it's for providing services, selling property, or whatever, the client must get a duplicate original immediately after signing the document. Now, in the olden days, guys, I started real estate in 1993 BC, before computers. Yeah, we did things before computer revolution hit. We would carry around a big box of documents with us wherever we went, as well as carbon paper. And we'd have to make 5 contract originals with carbon paper, and then have a client sign each and every page separately with blue ink to indicate a true signature. Crazy business. Today, let me download that form from the cloud, enter in all the criteria, give me your e-signature, Mr. Client. Terrific. Done. However, to complete my requirement, I would take that, put it into a PDF, hit it into an email, and send it off to you right after signing it. So as soon in the next minute or so, you get an email with the document you just signed. I've just completed the provision of providing a duplicate original immediately following signing the document. That way they have the original with them as soon as they sign it. So, provide a duplicate original to the signers for listing contracts, sales contracts, or leases, or any other agreements. Number 2, commissions are negotiated via the client and the broker. Wait a minute, aren't you the one doing all the work? Well, the answer is yes, you are. But remember, it's all under the authority of the broker. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we're going to start chapter 3, brokerage, agency, and ethical considerations, and what the relationships are and the hierarchy in a brokerage. And we know, since I already told you this morning, that all business relationships go through the broker. The salesperson is an agent for the broker who works for the client. So maybe your sister wants to sell her house, so you go out and talk to her, get her to sign a listing agreement. Well, your relationship is this. Your broker has the business relationship with your sister, not you. You are an agent for the broker servicing that client because you generated the lead on that, and you get credit for the sale of the property when it sells. But the relationship is between the broker and the client. Therefore, when you go down and sit with your sister about listing her house with you, your broker is going to tell you the guidelines under which you must get in the listing so he would accept the listing. So if your broker says, I need you to get a 6-month, 6% real estate listing, then your job is to get a 6-month, 6% real estate listing. If you can't get that, then you better call your broker for further instructions, because he may say, okay, then leave. Or he may say, okay, tell you what, get 5%, we'll do the deal. The fact is, you're the eyes, ears of the business. You're the mouth of the business. You work on behalf of the broker, bringing him business. Therefore, all commissions are negotiated between the client and the broker through you. You're the mouthpiece, remember? You're the eyes and ears. Therefore, you better understand what your broker wants you to get before you go out and try to get it. And as a general policy in New Jersey, all commissions are negotiable. All of them. Now, licensees can prepare sales contracts for 1 to 4 family residential homes. That's 1, 2, 3, or 4 units in one building. They can use the sales contract for the sale of single building lots or condominiums, which are considered single family properties as well. That's what you can use the sales contract for. And on Friday afternoon, we're going to talk about contracts specifically in New Jersey, and we'll get into much more detail about that then. But as soon as you sign a listing agreement, as soon as you sign a contract, you must give the client a duplicate original of the signed deal. And if you're the listing agent and another broker has an agent with an offer for your listing, that agent has the right to have his written offer presented to the seller immediately, within 24 hours. If you have an offer for another broker's listing, you would want to submit that to the other agent so they can present it to the seller within the immediacy or 24-hour requirement of the real estate commission. Do brokers always do the right thing? No. They're notoriously jerks about this. They'll delay an offer just to bounce the offer off another client who may have a better offer to bring into their client. Problem is, I can't prevent that. I'm relying on the efficacy of that other broker. But any written offer must be presented to sellers within 24 hours. That's the rule. All written offers must be presented to the sellers within 24 hours of them being generated. And whether or not you hire an attorney in New Jersey in a real estate contract is completely up to the client. They could hire an attorney or they don't have to. In New Jersey, it's not required that an attorney be present in the closing process of a real estate transaction. I always recommend competent legal counsel when necessary. And believe me, in this business, in my opinion, it's always necessary. So, always recommend legal counsel to your clients, even though it's not required. It's up to them to decide whether they want to incur the cost of hiring one or not you. But do remind them of the importance of hiring one. All other documents, brokers must keep copies of all unaccepted offers to purchase for only 6 months. But copies of contracts for sales and listing agreements must be kept for 6 years. And all other records must be kept for 6 years. Wow. There are actually 2 documents that a broker doesn't have to keep for 6 years. Those are unaccepted offers, and the other one was expired listings. If a listing expires, the broker only has to keep their records for 6 months. If an offer is presented and declined and a transaction does not result, then the broker only needs to keep that written offer for 6 months. But all other paperwork in the company must be kept for no less than 6 years. Any questions about these rules and regulations that we're going through? And guys, please stop with the what ifs before you even start. John and Adrian, you have questions? Oh. What was the other document that had to be kept for only 6 months besides unaccepted offers? Expired listings. Do counter offers fall in Do counter offers fall in acceptance? I don't understand what that means, Elise. Understanding what an expired listing is, it's a listing that is expired. That's all it is. In your opinion, would you be best to just keep everything for the full 6 years? I don't want to keep any paperwork I don't have to. A broker is required to maintain these records, not a salesperson. A broker is. Do contracts need to be hard copies? You have to produce hard copies for your records, yes. Accepted offers, contracts, accepted offers fall in, I'm not sure what you're asking me, Elise. Maybe you could put that onto one sentence, I could understand it. So once the contract is signed, we keep one of ourselves and send a duplicate contract to the customer. That's one thing you could do, or just a PDF and an email of the contract, and then a copy to your records keeper so you can print it out and keep it. Do you need to keep counter offers for 6 months or 6 years? No, because that's an unaccepted offer. You don't have to keep it for 6 months. Again, unaccepted offers. A counter offer that hasn't been accepted is an unaccepted offer. Unaccepted offers, 6 months. Okay, I think we got them, so let's move on. All right. Now, a broker can enter into different types of business relationships with clients. And one of the things about being a realtor, guys, is that you must disclose your licensing situation at every opportunity. Whenever meeting clients, you must disclose that you are a licensed salesperson, broker, salesperson, whatever, and who you work for. And if it's pertinent, like you're doing an open house, then you must say, I represent the seller, something like that. So disclosure of your licensing relationship to all parties in a transaction is required at all times. You must disclose to anyone you come in contact with if they ask. What's your position? My name is Tim Jensen. I'm a licensed broker associate with so-and-so firm, and I represent the seller in this transaction. There you go. So the brokerage business relationships take on the form of 4 different types of relationships. We're going to introduce them today, and tomorrow we're going to talk about them a little more. First type of relationship is where the broker represents the seller as their principal. In other words, they're a selling broker. They work for the seller. Which means if I'm the seller's broker, that means everything I do, every action I take, every step I make, I'll be watching you. Oh, no, sorry, that's a different guy. Everything I do must be for the best interest of my client, the seller. I must never do anything that is not in their best interest. At all times, my seller's interests become my personal objective. The seller wants to sell the house. That means my job is to do nothing less than sell the house. I must use every trick, every gimmick, every rule, every regulation in my favor to promote my client's best interest. When negotiating, I negotiate for the seller. If I hear the buyer has an issue, I'm going to tell my seller the buyer's problems. If I feel the buyer isn't forthcoming, I'm going to tell my seller, I think this guy's holding back. If he's not qualified, I'm going to tell my seller, this guy can't even rub two nickels together, let alone buy your house. So we don't even have to entertain anything from him unless it's in writing. And I'm going to be querying that buyer as to why they're interested in my property. And if I learn something that helps my negotiating position for the seller, I'm going to do just that. My job is to promote my client's interest of selling their house, and I must do it in the best way I know how. I work for the seller. He's my client. Everything I do is for my client's best interest, and that means get the seller the best price, the best terms, the best conditions that I can get with the least amount of hassles and worries. My job is to be my client's advocate, to promote their position, to do what's right for them. So as a seller's agent, I represent the seller, and everything I do is for my seller's interest of selling his property for the best price, terms, and conditions. That means if I hear the broker, or the buyer rather, could make a better offer than the one on paper, I'm going to tell my seller this is just a smokescreen. I heard that they can go much higher, so let's just reject their offer and see what they do next. Then they come back with a much better offer. That's acting in the seller's best interest. So the broker and the seller have the relationship. I just work for the broker. And because we're a seller's broker, that means the broker and me and everybody else in my company represent the seller's best interest. And since my broker's relationship with the seller is as a seller's agent, that means everybody in the company must be a seller's agent for that one broker, for that one client. You can't produce a buyer if you're a seller's agent only. You could produce a buyer, but that buyer must understand we don't represent them. We only represent the seller, and they have no representation. We could do that, and I've done it. But again, if I'm working for a seller, that means the seller gets my undivided attention and my full 100% effort to get them the best price, terms, and conditions, bar none. I think I beat that dead horse enough. The second type of relationship is where I work for the buyer as my principal. That means I'm working as a buyer's agent or buyer's brokerage relationship. That means everything I do now is for the buyer's best interest, not the seller. I could care two whims about that seller. My job is to get the buyer the best price, terms, and conditions, bar none. And if I hear something on the seller's side that could jeopardize their position, I'm going to use it against them when it comes time to negotiate, because my job is to get the buyer the best price, terms, and conditions. So before I go any further, does anybody have any basic questions about representation here? Not seeing any. Gonna move on. The third type of relationship becomes a little more suspect. In that, I work as what's known as a disclosed dual agency position. What does that mean? That means with proper disclosure and written consent forms from all parties, I could represent the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. This is called disclosed dual agency. Some of you may have bought or sold houses using your agent who worked as a disclosed dual agent, meaning they represent the buyer and the seller at the same time, which puts that agent now in a very tenuous position sometimes. Think about this for a second. I go into your house and say, I'm going to be a seller's agent, produce the best price, terms, and conditions for you, and negotiate on your behalf to get you the best deal. Would you hire me? Yeah, of course you would. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, I come to you one day and I say, hey, listen, we have a buyer. We don't represent the buyer yet, but they have an interest in wanting to buy your house. Now, they're not working with another broker. And if we're the seller's agent only, that means they have no representation, which means they're going to have to go out and get another agent to represent their interest if they don't accept an attorney as representation, which means now we have to charge the full commission and split it like we agreed to. However, if you were to allow me, Mr. Seller, and if the buyer were to allow me, you could sign a consent form to allow me to be a disclosed dual agent, meaning representing the seller and the buyer in the same transaction. And since that's the case, then another broker's not involved, and I could actually discount your commission just slightly, to make you pay less. However, I'm not going to be the seller's agent you originally hired me to be, because if I learned something about the buyer that could jeopardize their position, I can't tell you, Mr. Seller, about what that weakness might be. Likewise, if I learned something about you, I couldn't tell that to the buyer if it were to jeopardize your position. That wouldn't be fair. So who am I working for? I'm working for both, but I'm favoring neither. I don't understand how you can do this, Tim. No one can serve two masters at once. True. However, the state of New Jersey says that if I have consent forms signed by all parties to the transaction and they agree, then I could work as a disclosed dual agent, control both sides of the transaction, close the deal, and hopefully minimize the commission to the seller. I can do that. I've worked under variable commission arrangements before numerous times. Meaning things like, if I have to split it with other brokers, it's going to be 6%, but if I could do it myself, I'll only charge you 4.5%. That's 1.5 points in commission you could save right there. Wow, it's a better deal for everybody, by the way. So I can work as a seller's agent only. I can work as a buyer's agent only, or I could be a disclosed dual agent where I represent the buyer and seller in the same transaction, but I can favor neither one. Could that pose as conflict of interest, Tim? Hell yes, it can. And there's a real danger here. Because if I don't do my job right, someone could accuse me of malpractice. And if they could prove it, I could lose my license, the commission check, and everything else with it. So I better learn how to do disclosed dual agency from my broker so that I do it right. So I've covered 3 different types of business relationships. Broker as the seller's principal, the broker as the buyer's principal, or the broker as a disclosed dual agent. There's still one more type of agency agreement called transaction brokerage. Transaction brokerage is where the real estate company, brokerage firm, represents no client individually. In fact, there is no fiduciary obligation due anyone. We're just doing a job to get paid. That's it. We're not working for anybody except for the paycheck. That's it. What? Yeah. Transaction brokerage is where I represent no one. All I do is the job requirements that I'm required to do. Let me give an example. A for sale by owner finds a buyer by himself and then calls me up. Hey, Tim, you're that real estate broker we read about. Yeah, what about it? Listen, we found ourselves a buyer. Well, congratulations. What are you calling me for? Because we don't know how to get to a closing. You need to help us. Okay, so my fee is X if you want me to do that. Would you like me to do that? Yes. Will you be representing us then? No. What I'm going to do is charge the deal X dollars to be paid in advance, non-refundable to me. I will provide all the paperwork and direction to get you to closing. Whether you close or not, none of my concern. I'm just fulfilling the obligations of getting you to that closing table. I'll provide all the instructions, the paperwork, and anything else that you need to get you all the information you need to get to the closing table. Whether you get there or not is irrelevant because I'm being paid for providing service. That's why you pay me in advance, non-refundable. So that when I provide that service, whether you close or not is regardless. If you don't close, you probably wouldn't want to pay me. And if you close, you may not want to pay me either. This way I get paid for the effort I put into it, and whether you close or not is completely up to you. That's an example of a transaction brokerage where I work for no one, but still get paid for doing my job. I know it sounds confusing, and I know this is all new to a lot of folks. But guys, this has been incepted in New Jersey since 1995. This has been we've been doing this for 25 and a half years now, going on 26. So before I move on, what questions do you have about these 4 business relationships? Was there any questions? Oh. The book states that any licensee involved in the sale of a residential real estate for more than 125 days is required to supply information on business relationships to buyers and sellers. Does that mean if it's less than 125 days, it does not need to be disclosed? No. So salespersons are not allowed to do so. I'm kind of confused. In what way? When you say not allowed to do so, to do what? Please be more specific in your questions, guys. Don't try to make me hunt for the question that you're trying to ask. Does a transaction broker need to have a physical business address? All brokers have to have a physical office address. Also, all of this only pertains to a broker only, not a salesperson. The salesperson works for the broker, therefore it pertains to them too. When the broker acts as a disclosed dual agent, what role does the salesperson play? Well, they're the agent for the broker. What are the rules that guides transactional brokerage? I just gave them to you. You work for no one. There's no fiduciary obligation. You just do your job and get paid for it. I'm not seeing any new questions come up, so I'm going to move on. Oh, hang on. So would the agent represent both parties as well? You're working for the broker as their agent. So yeah. What contract would be used for the broker principals? For the broker principals? Well, if it's for selling, it would be a listing agency agreement. If it's for buying, it would be a buyer's agency agreement. If it was a disclosed dual agency, then disclosed dual agency consent forms must be signed. If it's a transaction brokerage, then a transaction brokerage agreement must be signed. Hope I answered your questions. Was there anybody else with a question before I move on? Do you need experience to be a transaction broker? You have to have a license. I'm sorry, but Suheili Aishu, your keyboard's open for some time. I don't know if you're asking a question or just forgot. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Sales, okay. Sales license or broker's license to be a transaction agent. I'm guessing that's a statement. I don't understand the context. Understood, Sahib, but your keyboard has been open for quite some time like you were asking. That's why I made a special statement about that. Let's see. Do we, as the salesperson, act as the broker in this case because we represent the broker? Correct, Stephen. You represent the broker's interest as their agent. You work for the broker. That's correct. You got it. Do we, as the salesperson, okay, because we represent the broker. Yes. All right. Was there any other questions? I'm not seeing any more, so let me moderate and move on. Now, look at the last bullet point on this PowerPoint here. It says, must provide consumer information statement. The hell is he talking about, consumer information statements? Well, a couple things we have to talk about. First of all, what's a consumer information statement? We're going to talk about this more tomorrow, but before any licensee in New Jersey gets involved with a client as an agent for them or whatever, before any discussion of real estate ensues, before any contracts are signed, before any houses are shown, before any discussion of real estate ensues, the real estate agent must give to a consumer thinking about buying or selling or renting real estate, residential property, a consumer information statement, which explains those 4 business relationships. And as I said, tomorrow we're going to go into it more fully, but if you're looking for a quick disclosure about what a consumer information statement is, I'm going to direct you to pages 43 and 44 in your 14th edition. That's a consumer information statement. It explains all 4 agency relationships. And before I discuss this real estate stuff with you, Mr. Consumer, I need you to review this consumer information statement first and just sign a copy that I gave it to you, and then we can talk freely. Why? Because in New Jersey, agency disclosure and involvement is very specific and carries much legal responsibility. Therefore, we are to inform any and all potential clients through a consumer information statement about how we work in transactions. Once they have signed that they received a copy, then we can talk and do anything we want. But until that point, I'm very restricted in what I'm allowed to do and ask and say with clients. We're going to go into it more tomorrow, so I just want to give you a primer on that. But that's what's required before we discuss agency relationships, is that they get a statement stating what those definitions are. Now, if I'm representing a seller only as of seller's broker, and that seller says to me, Tim, I don't want those dudes from that company coming and showing my property. I hate those guys. Well, I'd have to inform the seller of this. Mr. Seller, I cannot boycott another broker. I cannot discriminate against one particular broker. I must be fair and amenable with all other brokers. So if you want to eliminate even just one broker from participating in this transaction, then I must ask you to sign what's known as a waiver of broker cooperation form, which authorizes me not to cooperate with all other brokerage companies. That means only my people in my office will be presenting buyers to you. Do you understand that, Mr. Seller? Well, what does that really mean to me? It means less exposure. It means less chance of getting a better sales price. That's what it means. Well, how so? Well, let's look at this waiver of broker cooperation form on the bottom of page 18. It goes into page 19. In essence, it says, as the client, as the seller, I understand that cooperation amongst brokers is more beneficial to me than not. By cooperating with other brokers, I get more exposure to more brokerage, which means more buyers, which bring more people to look at my house. The more people to look at my house, maybe more offers will be generated, giving me a better opportunity of getting a better price for the property. Knowing all this, I waive my broker's cooperation with all other brokerage firms and only authorize my listing broker to represent me and to present buyers to me. If that's the case, then that consumer must sign the waiver of broker cooperation form, and then I would be working as a seller's agent with the potential of disclosure agency if buyers would agree. So the seller would sign a listing agreement as a seller's agent, then sign a consent form as a seller to disclose to the agency. When a buyer comes along and wants to look at this property, I'd have to have them sign a consent form to disclose to the agency. Then and only then could I be a disclosed dual agent and present the buyer and seller equally in the transaction. But other brokers might get mad at me because I'm not cooperating with them. So be it. Happens all the time. However, I want to caution you. This waiver of broker cooperation form sounds like it's beneficial to the broker because he's going to earn twice as much commission, right? You're not splitting with another broker. Correct. It is. It's exactly what it means. However, it also says no other broker can participate in the sale of this property. So in other words, all those other brokers throughout the entire state of New Jersey will not be made aware of your listing, will not be authorized to show and sell your property, and will not be given a commission by the seller or by the listing broker. So why would they try to sell your house if they're not getting a commission from you? They'd have to be getting it from the buyer. And no buyers that I know of right now are paying their agents any money to do anything, because the sellers typically pay the buyer's expense, the buyer's agency expense. So understand, guys, the use of the waiver broker cooperation should be consumer-driven, not broker-driven. You could see where a broker could tell a client, you know what, give me this house under a two-week waiver broker form and I'll have it sold in a day. He may have clients already lined up to buy that house. And if so, he eliminates the competition and sells it direct. But if he doesn't, and that house languishes for 2 weeks and then goes on the market, it's old news already. Look, that house has been listed 2 weeks ago. Now it's just coming to the market. There must be something wrong with it. Whether that's true or not, buyers' perceptions mean everything. So there's goods and bads to everything, guys. But again, if the consumer wants that waiver form signed, then it's the consumer's wishes that we must fulfill. If the broker's trying to push this agenda down the seller's throat, then that's wrong, because that could be contrary to his object of selling that property for the best price, terms, and conditions. If the broker insists on this, then he's eliminating the competition. He's eliminating any multiple offers or higher offers coming in than whatever he can generate, if at all. So it may be counterproductive to the seller to agree to a waiver broker cooperation form. Before I move on, does anybody have any questions about what I'm talking about? Did I lose you guys? Anybody lost? Anybody still with me? Let's see. Lots of questions came in. Okay, I'm going to go back and see if I can find them again. Can the seller who has hired a broker and finds a buyer without the broker's assistance finish the deal themselves and broker receives no commission? I don't know. I'm trying to understand your question. Can the seller who has hired a broker and finds a buyer without the broker's assistance finish the deal themselves and broker receive no commission? Depends on the listing that they signed, and we'll talk about that on Friday. What is the benefit of paying? What is the benefit to a buyer for a dual agent? One person for all your communication instead of two agents to deal with. You only got one. Can the seller agent pay a referral to the buyer's agent if the waiver is signed? Can a seller's agent pay a referral to the buyer's agent if the waiver is signed? There would not be any buyer's agent. Can the seller, okay, there wouldn't be any buyer's agents. Okay. Would it be in the best interest of the seller to advise against the waiver broker form, even though it benefits our brokerage, or go along with what the seller wants most? Yes, Mohammed, good question and very insightful one. Yes, we need to tell our sellers this may not be in your best interest because it eliminates the exposure, it eliminates the competition, it eliminates the multiple seeings and the multiple offers. It only allows us to represent buyers who want to work as disclosable agents. But good question. Okay, still with me, would be considered an exclusive listing. It would be an office exclusive only, not an exclusive listing. It would be called an office exclusive. That's the term they use, even though that's incorrect. That's what they would use. Seems like you would only do that if you have a buyer lined up. Correct, Kelly. That's probably the only reason I would try to talk. And again, it may be the wrong thing to do. Can you go over what's the bad part of the waiver broker cooperation? Eliminating the competition. I think I said that about 4 times. Tanique. All right. Was there any other questions before I move on? All right. Not seeing any other questions. Let's move on. All right. Now, what about the relationship between broker and salesperson? Now, this is where the rubber is going to hit the road for you guys. Now, you, as an independent contractor, that's what you're going to be. You're not going to be an employee. You're not going to get a salary. You're not going to get benefits. There is no draw against commission. Well, maybe a broker would offer that, but that's a really bad idea. There's no health care being paid for. You pay for all your own expenses. You're an independent contractor. Whatever compensation you get from your broker must be agreed to in your employment agreement or your independent contractor agreement. And you must sign an independent contractor agreement when you get hired by a brokerage firm, which means you get paid for producing business, period. In other words, you get your license, you better go out and start producing buyers and sellers and contracts so that you can get paid at closing. If you don't, then you won't have any closings, so you won't have any payments coming to you. So you're going to be paid on production. What is the compensation rate that is expected as a salesperson? Well, that's negotiated between you and the broker that hires you. So here's a hint. Right now, as of January 4th, 2001, you must find a broker that's going to hire you. How do I do that? Hey Siri, name all the real estate brokers near me. Oh, look, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, sorry, just 4, 5, 6, 7. See more on that. There's a whole bunch of real estate brokers around me. I should call every one of them up and say, hey, I'm getting a real estate license. Can I come and interview with you? And you should, because that's how you're going to find a broker to get hired by. What questions do I ask them? That's another good question. Thanks for asking. So if you turn to page, I think it's 13 in your introduction. Yes. On page 13 of the introduction at the beginning of your book, there's a list of about 15 to 20 questions right there that you can ask your employing broker, the broker you're interviewing with, that should help you understand what they're going to do and what you're going to do. And one of the questions you should ask is, what is your rate of compensation to a salesperson? In other words, what's the commission split I'll be getting as a salesperson working for that broker? So that's the number one thing you have to have in your employment agreement. There's 4 essentials here. Number 1, the commission split agreement between you and the broker. When you produce a sale or a transaction, how much of the gross revenue will you be getting? A lot of people get 50-50 splits with their brokers. Some get 40-60, some get 30-70, some get worse, some get better. It's all depending on what you and the broker agree to. And there is no standard. And there is no recommended amount from me that I can give you. It's whatever you and the broker determine. The second thing you have to look out for is that if you have pending deals with a broker and you decide to leave the company, what happens to all that commission money that's on the table? Do you still get paid that if you leave the company? And if so, how much? There are some companies that say if you leave our employment and there's money on the table, we'll give you all the money that's due you. There are some companies that say you get a percentage of it because we have to have another salesperson sit that now that you're gone, and they'll have to pay them. So you're only going to get a percentage of that. And then there are companies that say if you leave our employment while deals are pending, you get zero of that dollars, period, nothing. Wow, so like they're keeping my money if I leave the company? In some cases, yes, they might. So understand, it's up to you to ask the questions. If I were to leave the company and deals were pending, how much of that commission will I actually be getting if I do leave? That has to be in your employment agreement as well. The third thing that must be in your employment agreement is the promise by your broker to turn over any monies due you within 10 days of the broker being paid, or as soon after the check is cleared. So typically what happens is if you have a closing, your deal closes. You go to the closing and you get a check from the attorneys for, let's say, $20,000. Well, the check's not made out to you. It's made out to your broker. So you bring that back to your broker. Then you start counting 10 days. The date the broker was paid was on the 4th. So by the 14th, I should have a commission check for the percentage amount that's in my agreement with the broker. If I'm on a 50-50 and he just received a check for $20,000, then I should be getting a check for 10 grand, less any advertising or marketing fees or franchise fees they take out of your agreement. So that's the third thing. First was the commission split. Second was the rate of compensation if you leave and deals are pending. Third is the promise of the broker to turn over all monies due you within 10 days of the broker being paid. And the fourth thing is that if there were any changes to occur in the contract, that both parties must agree in writing to the change. Your broker just can't come to you and say, you know what, I don't like the way you're working, I'm going to reduce your commission amount. He can't do that. He has to have you agree in writing to be able to do that. So any change in a contract must be authorized by both parties to that contract. So those are the four essential elements of this independent contractor agreement that you're going to have in it. And there's a whole bunch more. In your book, in chapter 3, tomorrow, there's also a sample independent contractor agreement on page 34, 5, 6, 7, 8. You should read over that. And by the way, as I say every morning, pre-read your chapters before we start. So tomorrow, pre-read chapters 3 and 4. That's what tomorrow is. So again, there's the things as you as an independent contractor must look out for when being hired by a broker to make sure that you're going to get the compensation that you agreed to, when it's due you, and without any problems. Any questions about independent contractor? We're going to go into this more tomorrow, guys. But again, this is just an introduction here. Good, not seeing any questions. Let's move on then. So this week, okay, those are the other two things in the contract you must agree to. Good. Now, again, I did see someone trying to answer a question. Was there a question I may have been too quick to this? If so, please ask. No? Oh, there it is. I'll wait. Can you show slide 11? Guys, again, all this stuff is directly from your textbook. There's nothing new here. So just refer back a page in your textbook and you'll see the information. All right, not seeing any more questions. Let's move on. Advertising. Ooh, this is big. Advertising is very important. We're going to start this topic and then take a break for our afternoon coffee break. New Jersey Real Estate Commission is very particular about the type of advertising that brokers and agents perform. There's rules and regulations about all kinds of things. In fact, if you got nothing better to do in the entire world, and I'm talking bored stiff, out of your mind bored, you can always turn to page 486 and then follow all the annotated rules and regulations of the Real Estate Commission for 140 pages, all the way to 580, is it longer than 80s? 88. 140 pages of annotated rules and regulations. Now, you don't have to memorize them. You don't have to really even know about all that stuff. What you have to know is about the rules of advertising I'm going to be presenting right now. So, advertising. What can I do? What can I do? What can I not do? First of all, advertising rules regulate advertising offering to sell, buy, exchange, or rent real estate by real estate brokers and their agents. It is intended that the advertisement let the public know exactly who they're dealing with and under what conditions can advertisers advertise. So let's talk about the things you have to remember to pass your tests. Now, a sea change occurred back in the year 2000, 1999 to 2000. That's when the internet became the final say-so as a media replacement. Prior to 2000, real estate advertisements were primarily all in newspapers. Guys, I can remember writing up ad copies for all my listings and getting to my broker the Wednesday before the Thursday due deadline so I can get my ads in the Sunday real estate section. And back then, your real estate section of the newspaper was probably, as thick as the book is. It was huge. Today, you go to a newspaper real estate section, you may have maybe like 5 or 6 things in there. That's about it. Complete change, sea change. Why? Cost of advertising, guys. It practically costs nothing to advertise on the internet, but costs a fortune to advertise in newspapers. I remember spending, on average, probably $700 to $1,000 a week in advertising. And I'm not stretching this, guys. I spent a lot of money in advertising. Well, I generated a lot of business. As I said before, I had one of my best years ever in 2001. I sold $23 million in real estate, which means I had 99 transactions. Over the course of a year, that's on average about 2 closings a week, with a week or 2 off during the year. If the average commission was $5,000 a closing, you can see that I made some really good coin back in the year and back in the days. So, just as an example, advertising a newspaper, I'd spend, let's say, $750 a week. Times 50, that's $35,000 in advertising fees alone, which is a write-off to me as an independent contractor against my income. So I'd advertise quite a bit. Today, I have to find other write-offs because they don't use the internet, so I don't use newspaper ads anymore to advertise. I'm doing it on the internet, which costs practically nothing. Now, the advertising rules and regs that you have to understand, let me make sure I'm not jumping ahead here. Okay, yeah. Are as follows. Number 1, all newspaper classified advertisements, internet, newspaper, any classified advertisement for real estate must include the brokerage company that you work for as the main header. So if you work for ABC Real Estate, your internet ad would say ABC Real Estate, and then they must have their general contact information. If your broker allows you to, you could put your name in that ad, but it must be smaller than the name of the brokerage company. If your broker allows you to, you could put in your cell number, but it must be smaller than the general contact information for the business, if they allow you. Some brokers won't. And when advertising, you must be accurate in your information. You cannot intentionally mislead in your advertising. That's a big no-no. Don't ever do that. So, whether it's a business card, which is a form of advertising, a personal brochure, a form of advertising, your internet pages, your social media pages, all types of advertising, must have your brokerage name on that form, which is bigger than your name. Yeah, that's the rule. Just to give an example, this is my business card for the school. Okay? You can see where my name is much bigger than any corporate name. Why? Because the corporate name is on the back side. And it's much bigger than my name is up top. And the general contact information is for the school, not for me personally. So therefore, I'm in compliance with the rules and regulations of advertising on my business card. Your business card is going to have your broker's name bigger than yours. And then if your broker allows you to, you can put in your cell phone numbers and all that other good stuff. Now, internet, newspaper, social media, whatever. Whenever advertising, besides having the brokerage name, on the main page of that ad must be a link back to the broker's main business page. So you have to have a link on your internet site goes back to the broker's main page, required by law. Here's a hint about social media advertising. In the world of real estate, this is relatively new phenomenon, social media advertising. It came about over the past 7 to 10 to 15 years. Actually, it started about 20 years ago. But the fact is this, let's take a current scenario. You have a nice little Facebook page. You know, this is what I did Thursday night, la, 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 and had a good time and blah, blah, blah. And then you open up a real estate page off your personal page. Here's my real estate page. So on that, you have your corporate name and your name and everything's cool. And on that page must be a link back to the broker's main page and everything's cool. However, you have to turn over your access codes to your social media so that your broker can get into your social media to review those ads that you have on your site. What? Yeah, so that means they're going to be looking up, what did you do last Wednesday night, last midnight of the new year? Who is that you were with? They can look at all that because they have access to your social media. Here is a hint, because your broker is responsible for all your advertisement. He's required to take your access codes. Better to do this. As of now, between now and whenever you start with a real estate brokerage company, come up with a unique email address for yourself. You're going to use that unique email address for all your social media websites you're going to create in advertising. That way, when you create a social media campaign on Facebook, it's totally unrelated to your personal Facebook page. That way, when you give your broker the access codes to your social media campaign, he's only looking at the business. He's not looking at your personal doings. And who wants them to know what you're doing anyway? So, guys, I'm very serious in this. If you don't do that, then you're going to be having to create pages off your other personal pages, and your broker's going to need the access codes, and they're going to be looking up and seeing what you did with your cousin Freddie last Tuesday. You don't want that to happen. So build yourself a new email address centered around all of your social media programs. That's where you're going to do it from. And remember, you have to give your broker access to all these things so he can check up and see what he's doing, because your broker is responsible for everything that you do. Your advertising must intend to let the public know who it is exactly that they're dealing with. We're dealing with me and this company, because that's the main header on the page. They know exactly who they're doing business with. So, what can I put? Can I put that I'm a real estate broker on my business card? Well, yes, you can, if in fact you are a licensed real estate broker. But if you're not, then no, you can't put that on your pages, on your business cards, on your brochures, or anything. That's false advertisement. That's misleading. So whenever your licensing status is, you must present it accurately to the public in your advertising. There's no shame in saying I'm a licensed salesperson. For crying out loud, that's better than I'm not a licensed salesperson. That means you went to school, became proficient, passed tests, and can do business. So always reflect your current licensing status in your advertising, and it must be truthful. Also, your name must appear as it appears on your license. So if you're using aliases or nicknames to log into our real estate class, first of all, you got to change that back to your actual name as it appears on your driver's license, because this is the name that you registered under, is going to the Real Estate Commission as the candidate to become a real estate professional. And if your name doesn't match up to the one passing the exam, you're not going to get a license. So if you're here under a alias or something else, you got to go in and correct that to the current real name that you live by and are licensed and are going to be licensed under. So the Real Estate Commission can track when you, and by the way, just so you know, the Real Estate Commission has access to all our conversations and everything we do here. So if anybody feels that you're getting discriminated against or somebody's using inappropriate language, the Real Estate Commission has a right to review our site and see all this stuff. And all the stuff that's on here is being kept as a record. And they have combed through this stuff before. Just so you know, the Real Estate Commission is your big brother. And he's going to be looking over your shoulder at everything you do, just to make sure you're doing it legal. That's all. So again, your name must appear as it appears on your driver's license. If you have a nickname, you can use that, so long as you put little like quotation marks around your nickname. I do business and have done business, and I'm very close friends. In fact, he's one of my neighbors in Oakland. I live in Oakland, New Jersey. His name is Thomas Chopper Russo. Chopper, this guy he's number 4 in RE/MAX nationwide. This guy is the big dude. Chopper does a lot of business. Everybody knows him as Chopper because that's his nickname. He can advertise with those little quotation marks, Tom Chopper Russo, but only because the Real Estate Commission allows you to do it. But don't advertise your nickname if it's not appropriate. If your name is Slick or Snake Eyes, you don't want to use that as your nickname in real estate. That doesn't sound very trustworthy, does it? Just a hint. Anyway, it's 2:32, guys. I'm beyond my 2-minute limitation here for our break. So I'm going to take a break here for the next 28 minutes and come back at 3 o'clock. And at that time, we can pick up and finish our chapter discussion, and we'll do the review. So between now and 3, you're on your own. Do what you ever got to do to talk amongst yourselves. But I'll be back at 3, and I'll see you then.